Hello, ceramic students. Welcome back from Thanksgiving uh, break. So it's been a week, and remember, we started before the break with this whole idea of Gestalt, and we were going to look at ways that we could create a sense of unity where your piece feels like everything belongs together through different grouping strategies. The first project was a resemblance project. So hopefully you've sort of got something for that already. And then the second project involved repetition, because if you have something that repeats throughout a texture in the piece or what have you, that will create a sense of unity because people see the coordination between the element that repeats within the piece. So the last one, and here it says assignment two, but this is our third one for the Gestalt projects, is contrast. And we said that when things have contrast, we can separate out the different parts, but we can see that the whole point of the piece is to have the differences between those parts. So contrast is all about um, differences. So you can have differences in terms of color, you can have differences in terms of texture, and you can have differences in terms of the kinds of forms, the same way you can have that with repetition. So I've got some images here for you to look at, and we won't look at all of them, but I want you to look at a few. I'm going to talk about where the contrast is, but also what makes it work. In this case, we have this artist who's created a real big bulbous form at the bottom. It's very simple, traditional, and then the top, when you get to the rim or the lip of the piece, becomes less traditional. It's more sculptural. You have the scooping up form and the scooping down form. Um, and he's playing with the differences between those two kinds of forms, a very simple form with a more complicated form. Uh, Notice how the top is much smaller than the bottom of the form. So we have contrast there, which is good. We like to see that tension. We don't like tension in our life, but in our art, we like to see some of that tension. It creates excitement. Um, but if that complicated form at the top was large, it might overpower that simple form and the piece wouldn't feel balanced anymore. And that's a word you're going to hear me say over and over and over again. Um, Balance. So we want to have contrast in the piece, but we want to balance it. And more complicated things, you need less of them to balance off larger, simpler forms like the bottom of this vase. Here's an artist who's kind of got an object that we look at and into. He's also got contrast in terms of lights and darks within there. But that little teeny house is a small area by comparison to the larger forms. Now, notice here that he's also got some repetition going on. So, very rarely do you see an artist work exclusively with one grouping strategy. They'll layer them on top of each other. We also have resemblance here because I can make out certain things, something that looks like a staircase, something that looks like a house, something that looks like a river or sky um, in there. And the whole form itself almost kind of looks like a head to me. So working with multiple things here, but I like that you're looking at it and into it. Here we've got contrast in terms of color and texture. The body of the form has that one kind of texture on it, and the handle and the spout of this teapot form has a different kind of texture, and then that's accentuated with color. Look at a few more. This is a real simple idea, just throwing something that's very simple and elegant and then glazing it in a way that's less simple and elegant. I like the contrast between those two things. Here we've got horizontals and verticals. Now the color unifies it. You could argue that this is a repetition piece, but I like in particular how the lid has these horizontal elements and then these vertical elements as well. Now we'll go through some of these more quickly now so this video doesn't drag out. But we got a closed form at the bottom and an open form at the top that you can look through. We've got things that are recognizable with something that's less recognizable. So it's kind of like a figure, but it could also be like a vase. This is Peter Voulkos. He kind of deals with the process element in there. So it's organized, but it looks kind of chaotic at the same time. And more by some of these artists. So you can see this artist uses this theme over and over again. So the house, the river, the leaf form, and then this black underglaze that's then painted over. A teapot by the same person. A sarcophagus by the same person. Cups and salt and pepper shakers by the same artist. Another Peter Voulkos where it's got chaos and symmetry. Different textures, same artist. Different directions, same artist. This one I didn't mention before. This is a friend of mine. He does these pieces that have kind of the softness versus the hardness of the clay, and they're kind of thrown together, but they're painted very, spontaneously. I've always liked his work. Another one by that person who's got like something that's sculpted and something that's not. So a very simple way of doing this would maybe be to throw something on the wheel, and then combine it with something that you've sculpted, like this handle, which looks like kind of a goat, which the piece is made off the wheel, and then the body of this little lidded jar made on the wheel. And I think we're pretty close to the end there. Yeah. So there's just a few ideas to get you started thinking about contrast. Remember, it can be color, it can be surface, texture, rough and smooth, or it could be the forms themselves. One easy way to do it: make something that's very smooth and symmetrical, like something you would throw on the wheel, or even if you're just working on your craftsmanship, trying to make it as symmetrical as possible. And then something that's sculpted and not symmetrical, something made off the wheel, let's say, or something that has a different kind of texture. If you're doing smooth and rough, remember the rough is going to attract a lot of attention. So you don't want to split it up 50-50. You want it to be like 70-30 smooth, 70 to 30 rough. So you got to keep that balance in mind. Okay, I'm excited to see what we come up with. It's your last project for the Gestalt projects. And after this, you will have a chance to design anything you want for your final piece. So we'll talk about that in class. That's it. Bye.